95% of people think they're self-aware, but in reality only 10 to 15% of people actually are. And for the 90% of us who think we're self-aware, but we actually aren't, well, we're in a bit of a pickle. Most of us assume that the more we reflect on ourselves, the more self-aware we become. So we journal, reflect and analyse, trying to figure out why we feel a certain way or why we reacted the way we did in a situation. But research shows that more thinking can actually make us less self-aware. Nisbet and Wilson set up a table displaying 4 pairs of pantyhose and asked participants to choose which pair they liked the best. The key thing here is that all the pantyhose were actually the same. Even though they were identical, participants consistently preferred the ones placed on the right side of the table. This is a phenomenon known as a position effect, where people tend to favour the last option in a lineup. But when they were asked why they chose that pair, no one mentioned its position. Instead, they gave reasons like, "This one feels softer, I like the colour of this one better, this one looks higher quality." This study perfectly demonstrates post hoc rationalization, which is where we unconsciously make decisions first and then come up with logical sounding explanations afterwards, even when those explanations don't actually reflect reality. Psychologist Timothy Wilson found something really similar. We often create explanations after the fact because our brains need a coherent story. It's like when you leave a job interview thinking, "Oh, I totally messed that up because I sounded really nervous." But in reality, maybe the company had already planned to hire an internal candidate, or maybe budget cuts froze the hiring. But your brain needs an explanation for why you didn't get the job. This can be caused by the introspection illusion, a type of cognitive bias that leads us to trust our own self-reflection more than external feedback, even when our self-reflection is inaccurate. So instead of thinking endlessly about why something happened, there are 2 things you can do. The first is to recognise that we don't always know the real reasons behind outcomes, and sometimes it's not about us at all. And the second thing is to be more like a scientific observer. Observe your actions and behaviour in real life without judgment or over-analysis, and any conclusions you draw are just hypotheses. They're not necessarily true. Psychologist Tasha Eurich studied thousands of people and found that while 95% of people believe they're self-aware, only 10 to 15% of people actually are. That means that most of us are walking around with a completely distorted idea of who we are. Dr. Urich's book, Insight: How to Succeed by Seeing Yourself Clearly, explores how we need to balance 2 types of self-awareness to understand ourselves. The first is internal self-awareness, which is knowing your own emotions, strengths, weaknesses and values. It helps you to make better decisions because you understand what truly matters to you. It also raises your emotional intelligence, so you recognise your moods and triggers and don't just react to things. Then there's external self-awareness, which is understanding how other people see you. It helps you communicate better because you can see your impact on other people. External self-awareness builds confidence because you don't just assume how people see you, you actually know. The problem is these 2 don't always go together. You might have great internal self-awareness. For example, you know you're introverted and prefer deep conversations. But if you lack external self-awareness, you might not realise that your resting face makes you look annoyed in social settings, so people assume you're unfriendly. Truly self-aware people have high internal and high external self-awareness, which helps them make better life choices, build stronger relationships and be more confident. If you have high internal but low external, you might overanalyze yourself and struggle with imposter syndrome. If you have high external but low internal, you might live to please others instead of following what you truly want. Since self-awareness is both internal and external, you need feedback to balance your perspective. So try this. Write down 3 words that describe how you think others see you. Then ask 3 people, maybe a friend, a co-worker and a mentor, to describe you in 3 words. Then compare their answers to yours. Just don't spend too much time thinking about their answers, because analysing them over and over in your mind can cause you to end up in an overthinking spiral. If you ever sent a text after a date, but the person doesn't reply straight away, and your brain starts spinning, did I say something weird? Are they ignoring me? Have I already messed this up? The more you think about it, the worse you feel, even though nothing has actually changed. And when those thoughts turn negative, they can create loops called rumination, where you replay negative experiences over and over again without any resolution. It makes negative thoughts feel truer over time, even though thoughts aren't facts. It intensifies emotions like anxiety and self-doubt, and it stores decision-making and keeps you stuck. Studies show that people who ruminate are more prone to depression, stress, and even physical health issues. When this happens, you're more likely being self-conscious rather than self-aware. Self-consciousness is over-focusing on yourself and worrying about how you're perceived. But self-awareness is observing yourself objectively, learning and improving. Self-consciousness might say, I look so stupid in that meeting, everybody probably thinks I'm clueless, I just shouldn't speak up again. Whereas self-awareness says, I noticed I got nervous in that meeting, next time I'll prepare some talking points. Psychologists Duval and Wickland found that when people focus too much on themselves, they become self-conscious and anxious. Instead of improving, they tend to avoid situations that make them feel uncomfortable. That's why people with high self-consciousness often shrink away from challenges instead of using self-awareness to grow. The spotlight effect is a cognitive bias where we overestimate how much others notice and judge us in social situations. We tend to believe we're in the spotlight, with everyone paying close attention to our appearance, our mistakes and our actions, when in reality, most people are too focused on themselves to notice. So the next time you feel self-conscious, remind yourself, people aren't paying nearly as much attention to you as you think. They're all preoccupied with their own lives. We've all been there. Something happens and we start over-analysing. Maybe you don't stick to your daily music practice, so you start asking yourself, why do I always feel so unmotivated? Or maybe you're torn between two study options, so you start asking yourself, why can't I just figure out what I want? And it feels productive, like we're searching for answers. But according to Tasha Eurich, these why questions actually work against us. Instead of uncovering real self-awareness, it keeps us stuck in our emotions and we spiral into self-blame, we overthink past mistakes, or we create stories that might not even be true. For example, if I ask myself, why are 95% of my viewers not subscribers? My brain responds with, because I'm not likable, because I'm not good enough, because I feel too awkward to ask them. None of these thoughts actually help me improve. They just reinforce my negative emotions. So instead of asking why, Eurich suggests shifting to what questions because they lead to solutions and not spirals. So instead of asking myself, why are 95% of my viewers not subscribers? I could ask myself, what changes can I make to encourage more people to subscribe? We spent a lot of time thinking about, well, thinking, but you're not just a brain. You're actually the rider of an elephant. The rider wants to steer the elephant, making decisions based on reason, analysis and self-awareness. But the elephant represents your emotions, your instincts and your subconscious patterns. Basically all the things you feel and react to and you do without consciously thinking about it. Let's say you believe you're a great listener in conversations and you pride yourself on being present and empathetic. But if you were to observe yourself, you might realise you often interrupt or your mind wanders onto other things while the other person is speaking. You thought you were being attentive, which is your rider talking, but your elephant, your habits and your internal distractions was actually pulling you away from the moment. Real self-awareness is about stepping out of your head and into the world to see how you actually show up in real situations. But if you keep getting stuck in your own head, then watch this video next, stop your overthinking and start taking action. Like this video if you found it helpful, subscribe if you can, and thank you for watching.